On this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Roundball Australia podcast network. It was a great week to be a home team in the A-League women competition, with not only all four home teams winning, but the away teams failing to score a single goal across the four games. As the competition moves into essentially what is 1/3 of round 5, maybe a little bit less. We'll get into that. As there are a number of national teams in action here in Australia. The Junior Matildas, as of the time of recording, currently in action against Thailand, down 2-0 at Wanderers Football Park. And literally minutes after we finished recording last week, games involving the young Matildas and the squad were announced. So we'll get into that as well before the senior Matildas take on New Zealand in a 2-game series. We'll get to your questions, and I think it's the time for the much-awaited return of Paletti's rants here on this episode of the Dubcast. My name is Paletti. Joining me as always is Burke. I wonder what my rant could be about this week.
I wondered too. There is not a single topic that's coming to mind that it could possibly be about. But yeah, we're back another week, another round of dub. It's been an interesting one this week. But yeah, very good to be a home team, very bad to be an away team. I don't think I've seen a round like this ever before that I can recall.
Certainly, I certainly can't think of any that come to mind off the top of my head either. I'm sure someone will be able to get in the comments and tell us it was like round 7 in 2012 where all the home teams won. And there's not a knock on any one of the comments.
No,
please, if you can
no,
think of when this
please.
happened, please
That would
let
be
us know.
Very cool.
We just can't think of it off the top of our heads as it stands. But we'll jump straight into the action because there's a lot to talk about. As always, we start with our big storylines. And Burke, you can kick us off. Where are we going first?
Yeah, my big storyline is the Newcastle Jets having their best start to the league, like to the season ever. No losses in 3 rounds. Good stuff.
Yep. It is the first time they have been undefeated through 3 rounds of action. Of course, they had the bye week in there as well, which is why we're into round 4 and they've only played 3 games. That's going to drive me nuts all season. It's just the mismatched balance of games, with games being rescheduled here, games being rescheduled there. Games in hand is going to be a very overused phrase for the rest of the season.
Games in hand is going to have so many people so messed up about, like, the table.
Well, it's just like, if this team wins these 2 games and that team loses their 2 games, and all of a sudden their ladder positions are flipped, and the permutations come into it, and it's like
permutations.
It's easier to just look at the table as it is and just leave that as a little asterisk at the bottom when discussing how good a team may or may not be, because we don't know anything until you actually play the games.
It's like that gif of that old lady and all the math equations are floating in front of her, and she's like, that's what it is. Don't try and work it out. Let someone smarter than you work it out. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know what a permutation even is, and I'm not going to learn.
But anyway, Newcastle beating the Western Sydney Wanderers 1-0 on the weekend to go to keep their undefeated streak through 3 games alive. Lauren Allen in her 100th game with the goal, because of course it was going to be Lauren Allen in a milestone game. Milestone games, they bring things out of players that you didn't know they had in their arsenal, or you didn't know they had in their arsenal, and they just do it anyway. It was the game's only goal, and the Jets sneakily looking good.
Yeah, I'm scared. I feel like I'm being lured into a trap. But one thing I did want to mention was Lauren Allen's celebration that she did for the goal. She did like the little Spider-Man hands, and then at the end of the game, she was carrying around a Spider-Man figurine. It was a tribute, or like a shout out to her little niece, which was really cute.
Aww.
Yeah,
that
very
is
nice.
so sweet.
Love when people do celebrations. Love it even more when the celebrations have a little meaning behind them. I think it's really fun. But yeah, Newcastle, almost like it's actually a lot easier to be good when you aren't getting a red card every week. Who would have thought? Not me. Definitely not me. As
It's
for,
almost like if you can keep 11 players on the pitch, good
it's
things
so much
happen.
easier. It's so much easier to play the game. Crazy. As for Western Sydney Wanderers, I didn't feel like they were out of the game at any point. They just, yeah, didn't manage to convert anything. But yeah, I haven't lost hope for Western Sydney Wanderers. But I haven't lost hope, but I don't have a lot of hope. So
I think that's fair. Through 4 games, 1 win, 3 losses for the Western Sydney Wanderers. Their lone win coming against Brisbane. 3 goals for 8 goals against for a -5 goal differential, which is what's putting them below Perth Glory, who have a -4 goal differential. Obviously, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later, most sides having the week off. The Western Sydney Wanderers are one of them, so it'll give them a chance to refresh, have a look at some things throughout the first few weeks of the season where they can improve, get some training minutes into the legs, and hopefully be able to pull little bits together to help them as the season continues. Is there anything else you wanted to say on this game, Burke?
no, I think we got it.
Well, we're going to head on to my big storyline now, and that will actually see us continue through the games in the sequential order of which they happen, because my big storyline is Canberra United. My word. What a game this was for the side from the nation's capital, less so for the team out west. Michelle Heyman opening the scoring 3 minutes in, then Emma Robers doubling the advantage in the 8th minute before Beth Gordon scored the 3rd goal of the game in the 57th minute. This was all Canberra from start to finish. There was no chance for Perth to get into this game, which is becoming very, very concerning for the Glory.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing really with this game for me, from what I saw of it, I think Daloste really had just a really bad day at the office, unfortunately. Um, but I don't think much of Perth Glory were having a better day than her. Um, this is no offense and no shade to no Perth Glories, but they were giving a lot of headless chicken football, which is unfortunate because we know they can be good. We have seen they can be quite good. Um, they just need to stop conceding. But yeah, very much headless chicken ball from Perth Glory. Great game from Canberra. Just an absolute complete performance at every possible angle that you could look at it from. I really loved the goal from Beth Gordon. I think the whole build up to that was just excellent. Just beautiful football. Let's go, Canberra.
Absolutely, and we'll touch more on Beth Gordon in a moment. But before we move on, I did want to touch a little bit more on the Glory. Ben Smith from the West newspaper, from the West Australian over there, does a great job in WA covering all sorts of sports, but particularly the Perth Glory. Wrote during the week that of the 6 goals Perth have conceded, this was before the Canberra game, so far 4 of them came in the 10 minutes after half time, and when Lightning forced players off the field during their game against Sydney FC, they conceded 13 minutes after play got back underway then. So Perth Glory are not handling stoppages in play very well at all. Obviously, the first 2 here came after, the game had started inside that little 10-minute period there. So, slow start, possibly. But then, it was only 12 minutes after the halftime break that they concede to Beth Gordon. Fantastic strike, as you mentioned. I'm genuinely concerned that there is a deeper issue at Perth Glory, that they're not going to get a chance to solve this international break because they've got to go straight into another game against Melbourne Victory, which I mean, the start of the season has been incredibly cruel to them. Play the Wanderers away from home to open the season, then play Brisbane at home in one of the worst time slots imaginable, 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. So a very, very short week, even if it was the Friday night the week before. Travel away to Sydney, travel away to Canberra, and now travel away to the Victory, all within the first 5 rounds. A very tough start to the season for any side in the competition, let alone a side that clearly has some sort of issue with focusing after stoppages in play. I don't know when they're going to get a chance to work on this besides the bye week, but at that point, like, I don't know when their bye week is off the top of my head, their first one, but if this keeps up, it could be too late.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a really rough schedule. I don't know if there's really a way that can like it can be avoided because unfortunately they are literally on the other side of the earth. So they do have to travel. But the conceding every goal after every goal, conceding as many goals as they have just after the halftime break, odd. What's going on in the change rooms, guys? Like what kind of spiel are we getting that they just go completely blank? It's not good.
It's
Let's
not.
let's change up the halftime talk, guys. Let's use some positive words in the halftime huddle, like focus. Like we still have a game to play. I don't know, man. That's a really interesting stat, and it really does lead me to think that there's something odd going on in the change rooms.
Yeah, so I've just had a look at it. So their first bye actually comes next week. So
Oh,
they will not play round 6 of the season. So they'll have a chance
well,
to work on it sooner rather than later. But they've still got to get through Melbourne Victory first. Which good luck with that.
well,
We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that shortly. But before we do that, I wanna have a proper look at Canberra here. We identified in the season preview being able to fit Sasha Grove, Tegan Bertolicio, and Hayley Taylor-Young in the starting side, and Jagarinich did that here in this fixture, starting Hayley Taylor-Young at midfield. Is that a long-term solution? Because it worked, but
but it
given
worked
how
against Perth.
you've literally took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry, my bad.
No.
Same
It worked.
wavelength.
It worked against Perth, who, as we've just touched on, are clearly struggling to start the season. Does this work against a Sydney FC, a Melbourne City, an Adelaide United? You know, or like, it's just one of those things where we might have to wait and see what happens.
I think it is. I mean, has Taylor Young played midfield a lot previously? I don't think so.
I only really recall seeing her at fullback when
Yeah.
I've watched her in the NPL. I don't recall seeing her playing higher up the pitch.
But I know she does push forward a lot. So I
Yes.
guess,
But that's the modern fullback, isn't it?
yeah. So I don't know. I guess she's just going to play a fullback role in the midfield. There are worse. There are worse ways to play football, unless you're on the bench as a dedicated left midfielder and you're not being played because you've been
Yes.
pushed out for someone to play fullback from the midfield. But yeah, because we were talking about how weird it was, or like how, or what they were going to have to do to get them all on the pitch playing together, because they're all so good that you don't want to leave them off. But at what cost? And is it sustainable? We really will just have to wait and see. I don't know how well it'd stack up against a team like Victory, considering who their midfield is made up of. But I guess we'll find out very soon.
We will indeed, given that they play each other they play Sydney this weekend. Canberra play Sydney this weekend. Melbourne Victory play Perth. We did just touch on that. sticking with Canberra for the moment, Joe Montemurro last week said in his press conference as to why he wanted Tamiki Yallop in the side, is that he wanted a creative midfielder who can break through the lines. Mr. Montemurro, can I interest you in one Bethany Gordon, please? Because my word, this was a 5-star performance from Beth Gordon. Certainly not the first time she's put in a 5-star performance, and it certainly won't be the last, Burke.
Yeah, she just every kind of move that she made was the right one at the right time, at the right pace. Like I don't recall seeing her put a foot wrong from what I saw of the game, given I did watch the mini match, so it was mostly highlights. So but yeah, just an outstanding performance. You don't really get much better than that, I don't think. I mean, scoring and playing box to box kind of business, doesn't get better.
No, it doesn't at all. So, what I find interesting here is Gordon is a former young Matilda. She's 27 years old, so right around the time where a lot of players are hitting their peak. I know those sorts of things are starting to happen earlier and earlier given modern football, but this is around the time players would hit their peak. I know she's had her injury issues in the past that caused her to miss the back end of the 23-24 A-League Women's season, the entire 2024 NPL season as well. And before that, it's been a case of, well, okay, you're not taking Katrina Gorry out, you're not taking Kyra Cooney-Cross out, you're not taking, all these players out of the Matilda's side ahead of her. And I don't know what Joe Montemuro's thinking for his post-Asian Cup plans, or if he even has his post-Asian Cup plans in place yet. But I know a lot of the talk from fans and from other people in the media has been what happens post-Asian Cup with the transition towards, refreshing the squad, essentially. And Beth Gordon is someone I genuinely would love to see get a shot at a Matilda's call-up in this post-Asian Cup transition, because there's players who are getting older, there's players who may not make the 2027 Women's World Cup, who may just call it quits themselves and not leave Joe Montemurro anything to have to worry about after the Asian Cup. But Katrina Gorry had floated international retirement already. There's other players I know who have, been in similar situations where maybe they haven't publicly floated it, but, have talked about it at different points as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of spaces up for grabs. And my only concern here, Burke, is that at, 27 years old, does someone like Joe opt for, an under, player who just played the under 20 thrillies, but the ASEAN tournament in Vietnam, to opt for some of the under 20s talent that are coming through as well, and try to set the side up for the next 10 to 15 years? Or do you take someone who may only be around for 5 or 6 years, but is clearly talented now, and if you get her into the system, could make an impact in the 27 World Cup?
Yeah, it really does come down to what Joe's seeing for the future, because if he wants those long-term sort of prospects, he is going to overlook the players that could make a huge difference now, in respect of wanting the long game instead of the short. So I think, these kinds of things really end up coming down to the minds of the people in charge, because there are plenty of players who are older in age that I would love to see in the Matildas. Whether or not they will get there is not even their problem. Sometimes it's FIFA's problem.
I wonder who you could be talking about.
I wonder who. Is there possibly a high-profile player with a strange case that's not being pushed through by FIFA? I couldn't say. We don't know.
Let's see. You could be talking about Kay Morrison. No, that's too obvious. Let's call her Kayla M.
Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, there are plenty of players that I would love to see that I guess are kind of like, past the age or whatever you expect. But yeah, like I said, it really does come down to the opinion and the thought process of the people in charge, because it's whether or not they want long-term prospects or if they're looking for something maybe to spark now. So, but I don't, but I do think she could, like she absolutely could play at the level that the Matildas need. She's shown that um, just this weekend. So there's no doubt about the talent and the
Yeah.
quality of the football. It's really just, yeah, the vision in mind.
I mean, more 5-star performances like that, and she'll become very hard to ignore for
Yeah.
Joe Montemuro, regardless. But speaking of Kayla M, we'll head across the ditch now to Wellington 1, Melbourne victory 0. Pia Vlock scoring her first A-Leagues goal in the 38th minute, the lone goal of the game, which marked the first victory for the Wellington Phoenix over the Melbourne victory in the short time that the Phoenix have been in the competition. It also marked the first win for Bev Priestman in charge of the Wellington Phoenix. It was a great day all out at Parramatta Park for the home side, Burke.
Yeah, it was. They, yeah, just kind of locked it down. There was nothing, it didn't seem like there was really anything Victory could do. They did hit the crossbar once or twice, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, but yeah, Wellington were just all over it. They really locked in and locked out Victory. Yeah, everyone had a good game. Obviously, it's really unfortunate to hear that they've lost two players, Alyssa Wynnum and Tessel Middag. Both
Yes,
of
to
them,
ACL injuries.
yeah, when I
So they
get
are
my
done
hands
for
on
the
the
season.
ACL in, like, when I get my hands on the ACL ligament, it's over. It's over. Oh my God. When humanity evolves that ligament out of the body, I'll throw a party. I'll be long dead, but you'll still hear me throwing the party. That's how good it's gonna be. But yes, both of them season-ending injuries. But yeah, they can still do it even without star players like those two. Obviously, wishing them both the best in their recovery because ACL injuries are the worst, just just the worst. Um, but yeah, they got the job done. They got their first lot of 3 points for the season, and all is good for the Knicks. There's something in there about like a phoenix rising from the ashes, but I don't have enough brain power right now going to do it. But it's there. Know that it's
It
there.
is. Um, on the Melbourne victory, so it was 18 shots to 5. Only two of those on target, 16 off target. They had 62% of the ball. Just a rough day at the office, an unlucky day at the office for the victory, given the trip across the ditch. Should just write this one off as it's a game that happened. Take a couple of lessons from it and immediately forget it.
Yeah, I think a lot of their choices when taking shots just weren't the right ones. Like a lot of shots were going at the keeper. A lot of shots, yeah, were wide. I think, like I said, I think they hit the crossbar a couple of times. Um, but yeah, they didn't have their shooting boots with them. They left them in Bundora.
No, they had the shooting boots. They left the accuracy boots at home.
Ah, true. You are so correct. Yeah, yeah. It definitely feels like a one-off or like an aberration. Is that the word I'm looking for?
I, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, like it's just, yeah, bad luck, bad day. Doubt they'll have a performance like that again. But you know what? I really shouldn't make predictions. We all know that I cannot predict. No one can predict what happens in this league because who would have predicted that? Who would have predicted Wellington beats Victory 1-0 and the goal is scored by their youngest goal scorer ever? And she's the youngest goal scorer ever by one day.
I mean, I wouldn't have predicted that.
No, you can't. Don't bet on this league, guys. If you are a gambling person, do not bet on this league. There's no point. The odds are rubbish. Don't do it. But yeah,
Gamble responsibly.
yes, or don't at all. I also recommend
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Victory, yeah, they're playing Perth on Sunday. They're at home. Considering Perth are really Perthing it up, they should be fine.
I mean, to be fair, we've said that a couple of times already this season, and that hasn't happened. Which is, again, don't bet on this league. Predictions just don't work in this league.
No.
This has been established.
Yeah.
It said if you do so, don't say we didn't warn you, because we did.
Yeah.
But on Pia Vlok, I spoke when I spoke with Bev Priestman in pre-season for the Dubcast. She spoke quite glowingly about Vlok, and I'll play that for you now. You've got that experience as a youth coach that was touched on, under 17s, under 20s with Canada. The A-League, both the men and the women, is very much a youthful league. It's moving towards youth. How do you think that experience, as a national youth team coach, will help you, develop the players? And then you talked about that life experience, from some of your recruitments as well. How does all that sort of bind together to help bring through the next generation?
Yeah, and I think you've touched an important point there. I think having a blend of a lot of things is really important, right? You can't have an aging team, you can't have a very young team, and I think you need to get that balance right. And I think trying to hit like an average age is something that's important. And some of the youth experience stuff, like I get super excited, right? Someone like Pia Vlok, we young, not people maybe won't know her right now, but she'll be a promising under-17 World Cup player for New Zealand. She's just been selected. She's the sort of project that gets you excited, right? Where a player comes in and you can imagine where they can get to. And I think you have to create an environment that fosters that through whether it be high standards, but also balance and support, care, pushing a player. And I think with young players, it is about getting that balance right all of the time, right? There's adversity. They're used to playing every minute, maybe from where they've come from. How do you now get them to see the bigger picture and take them on a journey? And then how do we best support that player to prepare them for their national team? And for example, someone like Pia, who's about to go to an under-17 World Cup, it's making sure that we care about the individual, not just the team as well. And I think I'm really passionate about that, having been a national team coach. You really always have that in the back of your mind, right? Like you want players to go on to achieve great things, both for club and for country. And I think we're critical in that. I know that some of the best club coaches I worked with, we collaborated really well. And I'm really keen to do that for any national team player that's in this environment.
And Burke, Bev said there that, not many people would know Pia Vlok's name coming into the season. I think they know it now.
I think they really do. I think they're not gonna forget the player who secured them their first 3 points of the season.
Yep, and then you just looking at the Knicks overall, we sort of touched on it a little bit already. Alyssa Wynnum, Tessa Madaga out with season-ending ACL injuries. Samba still not in the matchday squad for this game. I mean, they've got their 3 points on the board, but do we still need to be slightly concerned about the Phoenix, or do we need to see a couple more weeks and see how it plays out first?
Yeah, give them some time to get Samba back in, and then we'll see.
We shall see indeed, and we're going to come back across the ditch for the final game of the round now at Leichhardt Oval, capping off a triple header of football across the weekend. And given it had the Leichhardt Oval pitch had 120 minutes of action on Friday night, plus gripping penalty shootout in the Australian Championship, and was played in the rain on Saturday night during the Big Blue, the pitch actually looked quite okay for this game, all things considered, as Sydney FC ran out 1-0 winners over the Mariners. Maddie Caspers with the lone goal in the 76th minute. I don't want to spend too much time on this game as a whole. I'm going to ask two questions out of it, Burke, and I just want you to give me your straight answers for this. First question, are Sydney back? They're top of the table.
No.
Okay, why are they not back?
I'm not well, they're back tentatively in brackets because I'm not convinced they're like they're back, but they're not back. They're not playing at the same sort of caliber that they were 2 seasons ago. So they're here, but I'm not thinking they're going to stay top of the table because I'm just not convinced by their play yet.
I think that's a fair assessment, particularly given that they'll be playing Canberra this weekend. And yes, it is going to be a Canberra side without Bertolicio, without Heyman, without Liz Anton. Why they're going to be without those three? Well, we're just going to keep teasing you for a second or two longer before we get into that, because Sydney will also be missing a number of players from this game. And then, Burke, the second question I was going to ask you was as it relates to the Central Coast Mariners. This was something we identified in pre-season that perhaps it would take a little bit of time for the sides to gel together. They got a good result against Adelaide first up, and then since have lost to Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, and Sydney FC, all sides that were picked to do well in pre-season. Is there anything to be concerned long-term here with the Mariners, or is it just 3 games against 3 good teams in a short span of time?
Yeah, I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. But yeah, like I said, I was worried about how big of a squad turnover they had and how it'd work for them coming into this season. So definitely doesn't help that they faced so many really strong teams in such a short span of time. But I'm not horrifically surprised by this. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Of course, there is one more game still scheduled for round 4, Melbourne City versus Adelaide United. That game will be for Wednesday, December 17, as a result of Melbourne City's Asian Women's Champions League commitments. Put it off for long enough. We need to look ahead to this weekend. Canberra versus Sydney, Saturday at 4 p.m. Melbourne Victory versus Perth Glory, Sunday at 4 p.m. 2 games which should not be happening because it is a FIFA international break, but the APL, much like they did for this window last year, have made the decision to play through. Michelle Heyman, responding to the A-League's socials on Instagram, the quote, "The only league to play in a FIFA window. Cheers." This is something that I started to talk about a couple of weeks ago. It is something that we're certainly not the only one to have noticed. There have been other fans who have made comments, and perhaps rather unsurprisingly, the answer is what we all expect as to why these games are going on. There were more games scheduled for this window as well, but they have since all been rescheduled. Newcastle vs Brisbane has been rescheduled. Mariners vs Wellington has also been rescheduled as well, while City vs Wanderers was always scheduled for Wednesday, the 4th of March. The 4th of February, I should say. So this will essentially be a split round. Some teams will benefit, other teams not so much. Sydney FC will be missing 7 players from their lineup. 6-2 Young Matilda's duty. Kaylee Talon-Haneke was added to the squad that was not initially announced when that squad was released, and Riley Tanner will be off on international duty with Panama. So Sydney could certainly have requested for this game to be postponed if they wanted to, but Ante Juric said after Sydney's win over the Mariners that they were happy to play through against Canberra United this weekend, and so had no intention to seek a postponement of this game. I mean, this I just it's annoying because I mean Sydney FC are missing 7 players, and okay, not all of them have featured this season, but most of them have featured this season already at some point. I think the lone exception to that is Sophia Fante. I'm not going to talk about that because I've already talked about Sophia Fante's absence, which I think we covered in detail last week again as well. Football 360 were at a media event today to announce, I believe it was Combank sponsorship of the Asian Cup, and further asked Michelle Heyman about it, and then spoke to the APL to seek comment. This is from an APL spokesperson, quote, with the AFC Women's Asian Cup taking place in the middle of our season, we had scheduled to play up to 5 matches again during this window to avoid fixture congestion and midweek matches. We've since rescheduled 3 of these matches in line with our fixture policy and feedback from clubs based on scheduling and players caught up to senior squads and junior national team training camps. Canberra, as we've already touched on, will be missing Michelle Heyman with the Matildas, Liz Anton with the Football Ferns, and Tegan Bertolicio with the Young Matildas. I've already touched on the fact that Sydney FC will be missing 7 players from their fixture as well. I mean, we know why this is happening. We know that the Asian Cup, the league is taking pause during the group stage of the Asian Cup, as it should. We know that midweek fixtures are not exactly the solution because, you know, as the PFA report touched on, players aren't earning money to play in this league. They are barely earning half of what the minimum wage is in this country, at the minimum salary being $26,500, and that's don't be on a scholarship because that number goes down. So, you know, midweek fixtures mean players have to take time off work. That means they've got to do certain things that, you know, like, and that was all touched on in the PFA report. So, like, it makes sense as to why you try to play through this window, but anyone could see from the start that this was a bad idea, and yet it's happened, and this could all be solved by full-time 52-week contracts, which means you wouldn't have to play midweek matches at all.
Yep. It is just, once again, the easiest solution is also the most correct solution, and also the one that we are not going to get. Yay! Yay! The whole situation is just stupid. I understand why it's happening. Like you said, we have the Asian Cup. There's a certain amount of time in which we have to play all these games. But I still hate it. And we still should not have to do it.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Shouldn't have to do it, but it's happened. You know, and these games are going to be somewhat compromised.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to necessarily lead for good football across this weekend on the domestic front. So, yeah, a little bit of Paletti's rant there. I kind of eased back on the trigger a little bit, which is why I don't think I actually formally announced that segment, but that was the semi-return of Paletti's rants. Yeah, I'm getting sick of talking about this, to be honest. We know why we're talking about it. We know, yeah. Moving on. We will have a look now at the national teams. So, that game has finished between the Junior Matildas and Thailand. I did have the score up in front of me, so I probably should not have clicked out of where I had the score. But I do believe it was still the 2-0 loss in the end to Thailand. And yes, it was 2-0 to Thailand under 16 side against the Junior Matildas, which is the under 17s. Side at full time. It is what it is. I'm not going to be too angry about it. These are quite literally children. It's a team full of 14 and 15-year-olds. I've touched on a little bit throughout the season, some of whom I've seen at NPL level. So there's nothing too concerning about that. As far as I am concerned, they will play again on Friday afternoon at Gosford Stadium. That game taking place at 4 p.m. local time, ahead of the Senior Matildas facing New Zealand. While the Young Matildas, which is the under 20s, are in action against South Korea in a training camp. They'll play 2 games, one on Friday night, one on Sunday afternoon. I believe these games are being played behind closed doors. Nothing, no indication of a stream as of yet, as far as I have been made aware. But stay tuned to Football Australia socials as to whether or not these games will be streamed, because I would really like to watch these games, even if they are being played behind closed doors. I'll take you through the list, if you haven't seen it already, in alphabetical order by surname: Claire Adams, Josie Allen, Alexia Apostolakis, Tegan Bertolicio, Indy Breyer, Danella Buttress, Maddie Caspers, Amelia Kassar, Emma Dundas, Sophia Fante, Tiana Fuller, Daniela Galich, Sky Halmarik, Zara Kruger, Grace Kwalamu, Shelby McMahon, Alona Mele, Alyssa Ingsard, Poppy O'Keefe, Ivani Prakash, Ruby Sullivan, Peter Trimmis, and Talia Eunice. All these players coming from A-League clubs as well. Oh, if that's the side that is rolled out at the Asian Cup, I think Australia might be in with a genuine shot at the Under-20 Women's Asian Cup trophy.
Yeah, that's just an excellent squad. Just every name, I'm like, yep, she's great. Yep, she's great. Yep, she's great. Yeah, I would really love also to watch these games. I want to see this team. I want to see how these players work together. Please let me see it. Give it to me.
I mean, maybe there'll be a way to find some video footage floating around somewhere from these games if they're not streamed. One can hope, because this would be very, very good to see this side in action across the two games. Senior Matildas, as we touched on last week, both in our squad preview video, as well as our episode last week in action against New Zealand on Friday night, and then again on Tuesday night. But we'll move on now to your questions. We had both the Aussie Game and Sinanjaya Tipu on Blue Sky put the same question to us, which was whether Amy Sayer and Remy Seamson, who have both left Christian Sards, should come back to the dub. I don't know where you're going to go on this, Burke, but my answer is a solid no. I think for two reasons. I think the first reason being that they've just come off the back of full seasons. They could use the time to rest. And then I think the second reason is the window for, opens in January. I can't imagine there's not European clubs that are going to be biting at, the chance to sign these two players. Like, yes, you could look at something like Guestin or something like that, and maybe they need game time ahead of the Asian Cup. But, we just touched on the financial situation of the competition. We just talked about the fact that we're playing games to an international break because of, the state of play in the dub. I think, selfishly, I'd love to see these players come back to the dub. They've been here before. I'd absolutely love to see it. And Aussie Game on Blue Sky also said, the likes of Courtney Nevin, Galich, Caitlin Torpy, Mackenzie Arnold, whose seasons have all finished as well, whether they should come back as well or not. Again, my answer stays the same. I'd say wait and see what happens. For some of these players, they are free agents now, so I believe that makes them eligible to sign at any time. Guest stint, maybe 3 or 4 game guest stint at most. But overall, my answer is a resounding no, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts there, Perk, as well.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm picking up is guest stints for any and all of these players. I would absolutely, like you said, love to see them back in the league.
Do the Emily Van Egmond 4-game stint in Newcastle and go away.
That's the one. Yep. Come in, impart your knowledge on them, and then get out. Which isn't because I don't want them in the league. I would absolutely love to see them in the league. But also, where would you be putting these people? Who can afford them?
I mean,
and even
yeah,
if
we
you
don't
can afford them. Where are you putting them? Because if you can afford them, you've got money for other players. So,
yeah, I mean the salary cap of each team isn't exactly published, so we don't know what players are on, and we don't know, how much space teams may or may not have in their salary cap and the concessions that come from, being a Matildas player from the 2023 World Cup and, all these other little things that come along with that in terms of the salary cap. But, what you got to remember is that even if these players are only coming in for 3 or 4 game guest stints, someone's got to miss out. And do you want to disrupt squad chemistry like that? Like maybe come in as an injury replacement player on a guest stint? Yeah, I don't know. I just think there's too many variables here to make it not a good idea.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the Aussie game also on Blue Sky. Should the dub be continuing through the international break? If you scroll back about 10 minutes, you'll get the answer to that question if you missed it the first time around. We spent quite a bit of time on that. As I've already touched on, brief look ahead to round 5, Canberra versus Sydney Saturday at 4 p.m. Then Melbourne Victory versus Perth Sunday at 4 p.m. With all the variables amongst the squads and the times, is it even worth giving predictions for these games?
No.
That sounds good enough to me, and I think that does us here for this week on the Dubcast, part of the Round Ball Australia podcast network. And Burke, at least this week we know there's not going to be any international squads dropping.
Thank God. I swear to God, there's someone out there that works for Football Australia that knows when we record. And they're like, oh, they're probably done now. Let's just wait a little bit and then we'll drop the squad. Whoever you are, please stop. Please stop.
Yes. What we can't promise is that there won't be injury replacements coming in, which I did forget to mention. Charlie Rule coming into the squad, or into the senior Matilda squad for Charlie Green, who has had to withdraw due to a knee injury suffered at Spurs in training. I haven't heard anything more on that, but given that we were told a week ago, Alyssa Wynnum had a knee injury. I really hope it's not that dreaded 3-letter word. But that will do it for this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Round Ball Australia podcast network. We will endeavour to be back at some point throughout this international window before we record next week with some sort of recap of all the action that's been going on. And the best way to find out when and where, or when, I should say, that we're going to drop that is to hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell so you get it notified as soon as it is published on whatever platform you consume the Dubcast on. At Burke, it's going to be a good weekend of international football, and I don't even know what to expect out of the dub.
Absolutely not. And you know what? I think I may never try and make a prediction ever again.
I will hold you to that until I force you to make a prediction on next week's episode of the Dubcast, part of the Round Ball Australia podcast network. As I said, we'll be back at some point over the international break before our episode next week. Thank you very much for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your week and the football.